Jeff Brown is I'm reading your bio, a former criminal lawyer and psychotherapist. Jeff Brown is the author of Soul Shaping, A Journey of Self-Creation and Ascending with Both Feet on the Ground. Endorsed by authors Elizabeth Lesser, Oriah Mountain Dreamer, and Catherine Woodward Thomas, Ascending is a collection of Jeff's most popular spiritual gifts, graffiti. He is also the author of the viral blog that Lily has created a major firestorm and shook, I'm saying it in my words, in my perception, Lily shook the global consciousness. And that viral blog is Apologies to the Divine Feminine from a Warrior in Transition. He's also the producer of the award-winning spiritual documentary Karmageddon. And I love how you create words. You create these new words. I love that. And you have a new book coming out in Uncommon Bond, and we'll hear more about that. And wow, I'm just like, the short little conversation that you and I had the other day as you were driving in Ontario. It was funny. It was down to earth. I find you to be very creative and thought-provoking, and as well as no nonsense. You're sharing, you're bearing your heart. Even though the winter armored you, you're still opening and bearing your heart. And the conversation that we had, even though it was short, we're still having this conversation on Facebook, and you're having this conversation with hundreds of people online. Oops, he just went off. So let's see if we can get him back on.
I'm back.
There you go. So here you go, Jeff. Welcome. We welcome you. And yes, and like to just open up and allow you to just share a little bit about yourself and where you are and what's on your heart right now, right on the top of your heart.
Well, right. I'm in Ontario, and I'm in the last stages of completing this higher consciousness love story called An Uncommon Bond that I've been writing for lifetimes, I think, but mostly in the last couple of years. And it's been an interesting. One of the things about the editing process is that the writing process is intrinsically creative. So I'm in my masculine energy, I'm in my assertive energy, but I'm also really having to open the receptivity channel in order to create and craft language. So I really need to work in both places and find that sacred balance. If I'm too much in the armored consciousness, the willful consciousness, I can push through, but I'm not creating very much. And if I'm too much in just the dropped-in creative consciousness, I'm really not willful enough to really make something happen. I have an idea of something, but I don't have the ability to manifest it. So the creative process for me is about living in the heart of both of those places. And the challenge with the editing process is that it really is much more willful than creative. So I'm feeling the missing of the creative channel in this fix up the book state. And I'm looking forward to, I think tomorrow and maybe a little bit this week is the end of this process. And so I'm feeling tired from it and excited about getting it finished, and I'm feeling really fantastic about the book, and I haven't felt fantastic about this book, really. This is Soul Shaping. I felt a lot better about midstream, and Bond I'm feeling much better about at the end of it, which is thankful, yeah.
Well, that's definitely what I'm hearing is definitely that dance. We were talking about the dance between the masculine energy and the feminine energy. And you're sharing that that's what's happening in your process of creating this book, getting the book to the end. That's pretty a great demonstration of that. Can you tell us a little bit about the Uncommon Bond and how the new awakened masculine shows up there?
Yeah. Well, the book is really let's call it a higher consciousness love story, but of a very grounded form. It's written through the lens of the male. His name is Lowen, and the woman, her name is Sarah. And, it really describes his journey of trying to open to this great love experience in the early stage of the book, and to let go of the armored consciousness and to let go of the willful consciousness, to be able to surrender to this pool of experience that's so terrifying to his habitual consciousness, both because of his male conditioning and because of the nature of his childhood, which was quite armoring as well. So this love really forced him to go to a place that was tremendously uncomfortable. And then he does, and he opens beautifully to this profound love and lovemaking experience, and is catapulted to unity consciousness through the connection, and
Wow.
begins to experience love as a portal to divinity and as something that co-creates the universe, not just something that glimpses it. And so he has this experience of juxtaposing his prior version of spirituality, which was like the lone wolf meditation warrior vertically going to God, and then this horizontal experience, and his experience of unity through the love experience is so much more expanded and profound than the experience he had as a traditionally male meditator, for example. So I think of it as the difference between Vipassana meditation and what he calls in the book Vipassana meditation, and they're completely different orientations. And then ultimately heartbreak comes, that they can't hold this profound uncommon bond connection safe, and he has to figure out what to do with himself, either to go back to his habitual armor or to find a way to stay open in the heart of pain that he could never imagine experiencing and had never experienced because he was too armored to experience it. And so the book is really about the opening and then the decision that all of us men have to make, whether we're going to open or close, and then surprises happen along the way through the process and the journey. Yeah.
Oh.
There's a dictionary at the end with terms that I've created, and there's an author's note at the end because I had written my thesis on an uncommon bond. It's a particular type of soulmate experience, so I talk about that after the book is actually. I didn't put it at the beginning so as not to affect the story, but it's there at the end. It's quite a book. It's not a gentle book. It's not an ungrounded twin flame book. It's not it's really, ultimately he learns that he has to find a way to weave his emotional material with his spiritual life and to stop bifurcating his consciousness in order to be a whole being. And so it's something.
Yes, it's sounding. I'm assuming it's from your own personal journey. Am I correct?
It's inspired. I had an uncommon bond experience, but the story itself is fictitious. But I'm writing quite often in the male character from my own experience.
Yes, yes. For me, I start books from the back. I take a book and I'll start reading from the back to see if I want to read it at all, which is, I don't know why I do it that way, but I won't do it with yours. Now that I know that that's there, I won't do it with yours. I'm interested, Jeff. I mean, everything you just shared in just a few moments was so meaty. A lot of meat right there. And quite a bit of what I've experienced on the other end, having this profound love experience where the divine just comes rushing in, where all the masks are gone, and that place where we resist, we allow that to fade, just to transmute and go deeper and deeper and deeper, the scary places to go deeper. And I found that that's where, oh my gosh, the celestial, it just rushes in. In fact, I really don't have many words to say about it, and you're writing about it.
Well, if you want to learn how little you know about love, try writing a book about it. I mean, it is very difficult to articulate, and that was the challenge, was trying to find words for experiences that were so articulatable but not articulatable, so grammar free, so beyond my traditional constructs, and then yet at the same time were absolutely unsustainable without earthing them. I mean, this was the whole, uncommon bonds are people who Gene Ochterberg wrote about them at Saybrook, and I did my thesis about this. These are connections where people encounter one another and have really truly had known one another forever or something. But it's not a pleasant experience. It's often an incredibly uncomfortable experience because they encounter not only their stuff comes up in it, of course, but probably the collective material comes up in it. It's all the same field at some point. And so the way to, I use construct the term soulmates, OSOLEMEATES, because ultimately, if they didn't earth this connection on the ground, ultimately they were just ungrounded spiritualists. I mean, they were like the New Cage movement people, just floating away and constructing, pretending that witnessing the pain body somehow got rid of it. I mean, this is the big lie all over again. And then you try that in a relationship, and the shit hits the fan pretty quickly. So
you're right about that. I remember, having these conversations, trying to have a conversation with my mother. God bless her; she's a good woman, very, very much in the Christian framework. And when I was trying to share with her, I said, Mom, I'm experiencing some pain about something that happened in past. Are you willing to talk about it? And she said, well, all you got to do is fast and pray and Jesus saves. And that was it. That was like the conversation. And so there was no, forget about what happened, forget about the pain, and, let's just say hallelujah, and that's the Christian framework. And then in the New Age is, just, meditate and everything is good. And you're right. What I senses up is how let's deal with the stuff that is keeping us from our expression.
Well, there's nothing unspiritual about pain and woundedness and victimhood. There's all kinds of victimhood on this planet, and it's no illusion. It's the most obvious thing in the world. Just get on the subway and look around. There's pain everywhere. And so pretending it isn't there, detachment is a tool. It's not a life. I mean, it's very important to be able to detach on this crazy planet. But if we want to have a whole experience, we have to come back down into our bodies, men and women alike, and begin to move through and weave and heal and integrate all of these elements of our experience. Byron, or Katie Byron talks about story, and I really understand the value of trying to pull back out of story and see our story through an expanded lens. But at the same time, we have to come back down into our story, or we can't transform ourselves. And so really the work is to go, so Lowen and Sarah in this book, without going too far into it, they really endeavor to meet, and they meet instantly in something called the mystical, whatever that is. But eventually it becomes clear that that's unsustainable because there's just too much. The whole planet is terrified of being vulnerable on that level and open on that level. We're armored on so many levels and distracted on many levels because we're afraid of the pain of what comes up. And we don't know what to do. We don't have love elders to help us through these processes. Psychotherapy can only deal with some part of the process. They don't know anything about these kinds of love connections, So we're all just walking around trying to figure out. And right now, I think what we need to do, and I think that's what you're doing, is to initiate the conversation. Yeah. Let's just have a conversation and stop pretending we have it all figured out. We don't have anything figured out yet. It's early days. I just want to answer Denisa from Hawaii has asked a question. How is the female character experiencing this from a willful place or already comfortable in surrender? The answer is that in the early part of the book, she's apparently incredibly comfortable in surrender until the dude actually surrenders. And then and then the dude goes to a whole other place in his opening that she's terrified of and runs away from. So it's not always the men who run away from vulnerability, at least in my book.
Oh yes, that's. Thank you for that question, Denise. That was a good one. I'm wondering, Jeff, if you can just go a little bit deeper in your experience and what you're sharing about how men armor, the armoring of the masculine at this time.
Well, at every time, I don't, I think that I think it's necessary. I think the problem sometimes with the dialogue around gender is this assumption that it's simply a question of men becoming aware of how closed they are and how the musculature is armored and how the breath is shallowed so they can't feel so much and how they head trip a lot and become vertical spiritualists so they can get away from the heart and an enheartened way of being or a horizontal way of being. But of course, the world is still scary and crazy. So how far can we get away from being warrior, willful, and armored in order to honor our duty as protector? So it's very complicated, this shifting from survivalism as a way of being to authenticity as a way of being. We're at the very beginning of a thousands of years to come shift. God willing, we're here for that. Humanity is here for that. And so I think that it's complicated. If I open too far, I can't manage the marketplace because the marketplace is still a survivalist construct. And if I open too far, the women who are longing for connectedness actually don't like it that much because there's still a role I have to assume and there's still some gender counterbalance happening for a lot of us. So I think it's complicated. I've gone through many stages of de-armoring, the muscular, opening my heart, doing relief with aloe and holotropic breath work, the hardcore release stuff, in the love experience, opening so much that I could feel everything. And it became unsustainable in the world as it is, because the vibration of the world is not quite there yet. I think we're ready to begin talking like this about conscious disarming, conscious armoring. So first step is we make armoring a conscious process. So I start to notice first of all, men have to have an experience of openness so they have something to compare armored, right? And then you go back, you notice, okay, I'm armored, I don't like this, I want to feel in my heart. So now you'll develop tools and techniques to reopen, and then you stay as open as you can, but then you go back to the marketplace. And I used to have this experience as I was in law school in Toronto, and I was selling windows on the weekend, knocking on doors. I made all kinds of money knocking on doors. And I used to go in the Johnny on the job in the morning to take a leak, and I would say aloud, I would say, soul health, I will be back after the weekend. I got to go put on my armor and my mask and make money. So and then at the end of the weekend, I would slowly come back into my heart and let go of the adaptation. But it was a conscious process. You just start making it but not to get rid of all of it, because without that edge and without the edge that I write from, I couldn't write anything. So I need it. I don't want to disparage the willful masculine too much. We just want to turn him into a benevolent dude and not a malevolent dude, and then we've gotten to the right place, I think.
Okay. Well, thank you. I want to say on the other side of that, as from the feminine, from my perspective as a woman, I've had to really learn when to put parentheses. I call it parentheses around part of my natural softness so that I could get the job done, so that I could create what I needed to create. And, that being a kind of a masculine energy. And sometimes it was very uncomfortable. In the last 10 years, it has been very uncomfortable. Before that, when I was independent and a single parent and just going for it, it was fine. There was no problem with it. But then when I shifted and came more into the feminine energy, I actually literally consciously have to put a parentheses around the mystic in me, parentheses around the artist in me, parentheses around the creative one in me, the receiving, yielding one, so I could get the job done. So I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, the consciously putting on what is needed at the time.
Yeah, and
noticing
when it's time to take it off, so it doesn't become again this uncomfortable dissociative habit, right? You know, and the other option, and I've known many people, men I've known who become yogis and really open and do a lot of opening work, and then they refuse to rejoin the marketplace. A float through life, ungrounded, new age characters can't really ground in the world, can't sustain work in the world because they can't handle the discomfort of the world anymore. And, there's something very evolved about that open state, but there's something also not so healthy about the inability to adapt. I mean, we have to be adaptive in this world because we're not yet at a place where we really know how to hold humanness safe. The hope is that we just adapt only to the extent necessary before returning back to the way of being that feels true for us.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I do live here in Encinitas and North San Diego County in California. And in this area, there are a lot of yogis. There are a lot of men who are not grounded, who actually, quite frankly, for a lot of women that I work with, it's a turnoff. There's no, I mean, literally, the women say to me, "Where are the men?" And we love the fact that they're sensitive and connected to the divine, but when they're not grounded, there's no money, there's no grounding, there's no job, there's no, it's really a turnoff, and it really concerns me. It really concerns me.
I work a lot of women in session work, and they say they're not men. And so, what is a man? I mean, this is the question. What is an awakened man? What is an unawakened man? I mean, what ends up happening is we have this bifurcated reality where you have like armor dudes who just can't feel their hearts, and a bunch of heart-centered dudes that can't feel their willfulness. And and I think part of the problem is that we're still in a survivalist world. So, we need dudes to be in that protective world. And the world is crazy. I mean, you need that energy as well. And I feel like part of the movement away from the unconscious masculine into a place where we can bridge the generation gap properly is really the shift away from a survivalist world. So everybody could drop their shoulders and actually move from their authenticity more. I get that the irony is that the unconscious masculine is perpetuating the survivalist world. And so this is where it gets complicated. And I think if we could just put the women in power for about 400 to 500 years, we might be able to create the right world. But the dudes are not letting, the accumulators are not letting go yet. So we have a problem. Yeah. Houston, we have a problem. Right?
We have a problem. So I'd like to just see one of these comments here. We have Denise saying, "Oh my gosh, yeah, the Wolf of Masculine, extremely key in passionate attraction. Is that possibly what made her run? Is this necessary?" When I think about, so we have the new, the conversation is a new awakened masculine. I know in my experience with men, whether it's in a personal, intimate experience, a work experience, or mentoring, the energetic polarity, the fire in the belly, I think I'm going to call it the fire in the belly. The fire in the belly is what I'm looking for. Or not looking, but sensing. Is there a fire in the belly? Or are you just not there, so way high in the sky? The polarity, the energetic polarity of a negative and positive polarity, I'm talking about energy, is huge. And it's when we have that, whether it's in the male or female form, then there's a potent attraction and something greater begins to happen. When it's not there, then it's like, slamming spaghetti against the wall or something. I'm like, come on, where's the fire? My family is from Puerto Rico, and the men in Puerto Rico, although there are some conscious one, and then there are some, as you call the armored one, but they're fiery. I mean, the Latinos are fiery. There's a lot of fire there. There's a lot of passion there. There's no matter which way they're going, there's passion there, and the fire in the belly is important. And then we women are, most of us are in our bodies, the sensualness of it, the roundness of it, although we may be still under that domination of machismo. It's kind of almost like a schizophrenic two-step.
Right. The confusing nature of gender dynamics. I mean, I think the shift for me has to happen in terms of the fire in the belly masculine from fire in the belly that's oriented in the direction of sort of a self-serving, unhealthily egoic, accumulation-based drivenness to what I call sacred purpose. So
Absolutely.
That we start to condition all of us, men and women alike on this planet, to start asking the question at a very early age, why am I here? What gifts, callings am I here to manifest? What do I need to unravel and express and move through so that I, at the end of my life, look back on it as Virginia Satir did and say, I did what I came here to do. And if we can get our fire to be connected to sacred purpose, it has an inherently relational quality to it, so that narcissistic behavior starts to fade away, and we stop acting out towards one another because we're so deeply, delightfully gratified. If I can wake up in the morning and get to a book, the last thing I want to do is harm anyone. I'm so delighted to have the chance to sit in the heart of that. And so that, to me, is where benevolent masculine comes from. You start moving from the heart outward and from an impassioned purpose that's soul and sacredly driven. And then the gap starts to get bridged. If my due day in the accumulatory, unhealthily egoic madness of it, then of course they're creating divisions, and they're seeking to create divisions because they're wanting to dominate everyone, men and women alike. And it's a completely misguided way to construct reality. And we see the effects of it, of course, everywhere. Whether the planet will survive it, we don't even know. Whether humanity will survive it, we don't even know. So the sooner we can all move towards a sacred purpose model, that is an authenticity model. That is, we don't define ourselves based on what mask or disguise gets us through the day. I am an accountant because finally I have a job and my dad never had one, and this will ground me and I'll pay the mortgage and I'll be safe, something called safe. Instead, we move towards, who am I really? Why am I really here? And then once we find it, we just can't stop moving into that. That's what happened to me. And, I love law. I love trial law. I was ready to be prominent trial lawyer. I worked with Ed Greenspan in Toronto. I loved it. It wasn't that I didn't love it, but I felt on a very deep level it wasn't the heart of my sacred purpose. I was going to be good at it, and I was going to make money, and I was going to be the first Jew in the family that made some money, and all of those things. And I was going to get to live out the defending myself in a courtroom, Jewish persecutory history, and all that stuff. But on the deepest level, I didn't feel I was going to be gratified. So we want all of us to just go for the deep gratification of true path. And I think that will melt a lot of these gender divisions on so many levels. And I think women get this more than men do. They really get this more generally, this idea that if you can get your heart on fire in relation to what you're doing on this planet, that's the direction to take our energy, I mean, my grandfather used to say, be a lawyer, you've got to be a lawyer, you're going to be a great lawyer, and my grandmother would say, are you happy? That's all she wanted. Are you happy?
Yeah.
And I was annoyed by it. She was so annoying to me. It was like, are you warm? Are you warm? Are you warm? Have you eaten? I'm like 28. I haven't figured out how to eat without her. Have I eaten? Are you warm? Is your girlfriend loving? And are you happy with what you're doing? My grandfather, are you making money? You got a buck in your pocket? Are you taking care of the bottom line? And is there a future in this? right? So I get it. Pragmatism, enheartment, all of that. And as much as I love pragmatism, coming from no money, I love it. Um, she was, this booby who annoying, sitting, fetching, eating, fixing sweaters. Ultimately, after this love experience I had where my heart was opened and I realized the courage of the divine feminine, I had no idea how courageous you people are. I thought you were all just crazy, annoying, obsessed with relationship. Who cares about relationship? I want to buy a house. Who gives a shit about a relationship? And then it was confused. And then I have this experience, and I go, "Whoa, this is a whole other world with this heart open." And my booby starts to look like a courageous little warrior sitting in her little chair with a phone on her left leg and a phone and address book on the right leg, where every day she would check whose birthday it was and not miss, so she could make the waiting for people to call so she could commune with them and their suffering and I just thought, "Oi, you're so annoying." And then this wasn't annoying. This woman was a master. This woman was a genius. My grandfather didn't know anything about anything. It changed everything when the heart opens. Really does.
When the heart opens, everything changes. I've had heart. Wow, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for the compliment. Many times I see myself transmuting a lot of the stuff. Let's call it the stuff that is being projected our way, or projected my way, having to do with the masculine and the feminine. And at the same time, I'm also reminded of how, through the years of my heart opening wider and wider and wider, because I've always been one to choose the high road of love. But when I did have that most magnificent expression of love step into my life in 2010, woo! And
right.
he was willing to go deep. He must have known he was only going to be here for 26 more months, because he transitioned 26 months later. He must have had a sense of higher self, because he dove so deep into the divine with me. He let his heart spring bust wide open, and I was ecstatic, because that's where I always wanted to be, with someone. And in that space, the heavens just opened up. And then when he was gone, it was the greatest death experience for me. I really wanted to die. I thought it was totally over. And I found that it was both, the grief was both sacred and the grief was sacred. It was magnificent. That in that pain space, in that love space and pain space, that it was all holy. It was all spirit. It was all the human expression.
Yeah.
Pretty magnificent. Just there's something about the opening of that door where the divine comes through. The door of the mourning, the door of the grieving, the holy came through when I totally allowed and surrendered after he left. And 2 years later, I'm still in grief, and I'm like, oh man, I actually have to let the holy come through on this one. That the grief is holy because the love was holy, and because the heart, here's this divine being in a masculine form who dared to love deeply, dared to love greatly, dared to show up in its amazing masculine expression, so that my feminine could dance in that. Pretty magnificent. And I as you are sharing, Jeff, as you are being that voice in this moment in time, in your articulation, in your greatest passionate purpose, it is literally calling us to something deeper and greater. And though it might take years and years and years and centuries for it to be in its fullest expression, the words that you are speaking and writing are absolutely echoing out and calling our hearts to this sacred and scared place where the divine can come in and through us to something so magnificent. So magnificent.
I think that's waiting for us. And one of the great challenges for Lowen in the book, and for me in the experience that inspired this writing, was trying to figure out how to love forward this great experience after the loss of the beloved. And it's so easy in a world where it takes all that we have to open even once in a lifetime in such a painful world, to then not armor there's this movie, If Lucy Fell, Eric Schaeffer's movie that I love, and there's this character, and he's an old guy, and he sits in a wheelchair in New York, and Eric Schaeffer runs around, he's in love with some woman in his mind, and he keeps getting advice from him, and the old man, is cynical and negative, and he can't breathe, he's on a breather, and eventually he says, "You've got to go for it, man," to Eric. He goes, "Look what happened to me." He goes, "I fell in love, she broke my heart, and I stopped breathing, for God's sakes. I just stopped breathing." So we have to keep breathing into love, even in the heart of heartbreak. And that doesn't mean we don't have to eat a lot of ice cream and drink a lot of booze and do what we have to do to survive the blow. But ultimately, in this book, Lowen takes years, as you have taken a few years, to find a way to love forward this experience in an opening in another way in his life. And for him, it's in the creative process. He actually, in the character in the book, at some point decides to write a book, a love story about his love experience. And that experience of writing the love story, like this schmuck writing the love story about the experience, is really where he begins to find the way to love forward all that he learns. It's so hard to open that much and to see a different universe and then go back to the mundane world. Right? We all know this, not even in the love experience, but if we have an opening at a yoga retreat or at an emotional release week at Esalen or something, and then all of a sudden we've got to go back to the traffic and the vehicle and the anxiety and the lining up the post office and the honks and the horn and it's like, how do we carry forward this transformative opening in this armoring world? And all of us, many of us now, and probably everyone on this call to some level or degree, is struggling with this question of opening and closing and opening and then back in the world and all that. And it's, and I, for whatever reason, I was tempted to go move away and go live in Bali and float around but for some reason I stay right in the heart of urban Toronto because my work is to write about grounded spirituality and to figure out how to find the way to find my purpose. So I found my ultimate purpose to write in the heart of a downtown Toronto house. And that back room became my temple, my sanctuary. And then I'd go out on the streets, deal with the world. And I like this because now my weave feels more inclusive, more integrated. I call it Western consciousness and soul shaping, the weave of a Eastern unity lens and a Western healthy self-concept, healthy or relatively healthy emotional body, so that all of it meets at that. So we're like connected to unity, but we also know that we're something significant on the individual level, rather than the New Cage people, which will take you to the all oneness and you'll float away with Tole, but you don't exist as a self. You don't, it's like non-dualists talking about non-duality, like non-separateness. They remove the ego, the body, the identity, the personality. All of that is not true. It's all an illusion. So what exactly is non-dual about that, for Christ's sake? It's like removing everything painful and uncomfortable and unresolved from the unity field. That's called bullshit unity, right? That's in bullshitment. So for me, enrealment is like, how do we hold all of this? And that includes the gender piece. How do I include the capacity for receptivity and openness with the capacity for willfulness and determination? That's the struggle. How do I stay out of polarity and find a way to be truly non-dual, but without removing uncomfortable things from the equation, right?
Well, that's the conversation.
That's the work.
That's the conversation.
It is, and it's the work, right? Yeah.
We have in my area when I moved down to this area a year ago, and as a spiritual teacher down here, teaching from the Course in Miracles, and I was like appalled. He kept saying, "This is all illusion." You know, the Holocaust was an illusion. This is illusion. When
punch him in the face. Punch him in the face. Just punch him in the face and ask him if
that's a good one. And they were like groups. I mean, huge groups sitting there listening to this, and I'm listening to this. I'm like, this is a lot of baloney. You know,
well, it
you
is.
Can't bypass.
It's a drug, but now you know how many of us want to get out of here and pretend it's all an illusion. That's the problem, right?
Wow.
And you know what? It feels good sometimes to feel like this is an illusion because it's not easy, you know. But you can't keep floating. You know, I had a friend on Facebook, and I started to write more honestly on my page a year ago about. She really got into the new cage stuff, like, you know, never a victim, emotional body's not true, it's all an illusion, no judgment, like whatever, artificial forgiveness, like forgiving people even if you still hate them, and all that stuff. And so eventually, when her depression, her old unresolved pain came out through her body, she hung herself because she was, and she kept warning people that she was going to do this. She was no longer equipped to manage material because she had bought into the mantras of these dangerous new cage monsters. And I'm writing a book about them. This is monstrous what they're doing. I know they want to sell products, and I understand they got to make a living, but we have got to give a grounded, inclusive message to people, because if you tell people that their pain isn't real, their pain is going to kill them. It's not that complicated.
Wow. There it is. There it is. I was the only one.
I'm still waiting for somebody to refute that contention, because I haven't heard any valid refutation. I'm open, but I'm still waiting. You know, and the moment I say that to them, they all just go walk away, because really they know it's true, because they're filled. You know how many of these new cage gurus? I could tell you a story. I made a movie about. Carmageddon says.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna watch it. Yeah.
But you know, how many spiritual teacher authors in this field I've dealt with that absolutely lack integrity. Their personal lives are a frickin' mess, and they're calling themselves enlightened masters. Oh my God, there should be a prison cell for these people, because to call yourself an enlightened master and to hook the feminine in particular, if you're a male teacher with all of these manipulative mantras, it's a crime against humanity what's happening. I mean, it really has to stop. You know, this is not just about the unconscionable masculine in the marketplace. Let's talk about the unconscionable masculine in the spiritual community, because I trust a dude at a donut shop more than I trust the spiritual teachers in the community.
Speaking of donuts, no. Anyway, I mean,
Sorry,
that's one thing I like about you, is like you're really down to earth on this. And the PS to this story is so you know, I get sent down here and I'm listening to this and I'm watching people, and nobody wants to hear what I have to say, which I wasn't saying too much because nobody wanted to hear even the beginning, because I was like, what do you mean this is an illusion? It's not an illusion. That person, speaking of enticing the feminine, ended up enticing the feminine through their special, I'm not going to say too much because I might give it away at this moment, but with their special spiritual technique, and ended up in serious sexual improprieties with very gullible young women. And it all came crumbling down And when people were questioning, they were saying, well, how come no one knew? There was one person who said, well, Ayanna knew. She was telling me something was wrong here. And I'm not trying to say that I'm this big, because I'm not. I'm not human. I'm learning. But at the same time, it's not, and keep your thinking cap on. Let us keep our thinking caps on. Let us ground, like you're saying, ground the spirituality. Let us make it practical, and allow those parts of ourselves that are not whole to be made whole. Let those parts be made whole within us. That's right. Important. I want to, Jeff, as we are getting, and those of us who are listening in and part of this, this exciting discussion, please write in your questions, your comments for Jeff, in the chat box. Jeff, what would you say, what would you say besides donuts that the the masculine longs for? I say besides donuts because you sent me that email. But really, what does he long for? What's really there for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to broadly define what some of them want a Porsche, and some of them. I mean, I think I'm okay where I am right now. I don't ever call myself awakened. I don't. I think that's part of the problem. And this is not to disrespect your conference titling, but I call it awakening, and I don't. It's just a process for me. And I think for me, it's if I can have the opportunity to move from sacred purpose in my life in this sort of, every day I get a chance to sit down and write something instead of having to, like so many people on the planet, get in a vehicle and grind it out and go to a job I hate and just survive. And I worked hard to create this reality. I know that, and I give myself credit for it. But, there's so few of us that have the opportunity to really do emotional release work, that can afford it or create space for it, to clear our emotional debris and fields so we can then begin to have insight into ultimate true path and purpose. And so I'm just thankful every day and hope every day that I get more days like this. And every time I complete a project, a book, something, I am so startled that I could get through in this world, and so delighted to get, like, that bond is coming close. Whenever I come to the end of a process, I'm very anxious that the dark forces are coming my way, and often they do. Things happen as though there is some. Hollywood had it right. There is a light in the dark thing happening, and so when I can finally get that bloody book to print, I'm on my knees thanking this universe that I am one of the few people who've been able to create any of this in my life, and I want to make sure others can as well. Because it's, again, if everybody can just forget gender, just all of us can find our true path and purpose, it's more of that is more of what we need, I think.
My kudos to you, my dear one. When I think about the fire in the belly, what does attract me, and what I'm really honoring about you, is a person who is in their passionate purpose. They're in their sacred service, and they know it. They're on purpose, and they know it, and they're doing it. It's not just, they're really doing it. That fire, that life force, that they're so connected with the magnificent expression within themselves, that they are fully expressing what they've been called here to do, and what gives them great joy. And that
it does, but it also can be a very difficult path. Some
True.
people say the path of the bhakti, the devotee, is not always an easy path.
That's true.
and often a challenging path. So it's not like I'm ecstatic every day when I get to write. I'm delighted that I'm doing what I'm here to do, but it's not easy to find the words and to construct the thing. And so I think we have to let go of the, and not that you were articulating this, but we have to let go of the idea of finding why you're here or something. I mean, you're still in this world. You still have bills to pay, and you still have to deal with reality on every level. But there is a difference, and the difference is that when I used to wake up confused at why I'm here, I never wake up wondering. I have a list of things that are inside me to be expressed, to manifest, that want to be moved through me. So that's what I hope for everyone. But people ask, how do I get there? And the first thing I say, and I think Denise asked a question about my Sacred Purpose Course for Youth, and the answer, the first thing I really tell people to do if they want to find it is to do the emotional clearing so they can clear through the toxic holdings, the old anger, grief, beliefs, patterns, issue patterns. Now, those are part of our spiritual field. To the extent we work through our emotional material, we transform and mature in our spirituality. I said in Soul Shaping, repressed emotions are unactualized spiritual lessons. There is no distinction between, and I had a whole dialogue with Ram Dass and Maui about this. And, he said, well, you grow in your spirituality, you have an accident, a stroke. And I said, well, why didn't you just work your mother stuff and transform your spirituality? I mean, why do you have to look outside of your family history? I mean, that's a bypass. So it's all there, and it's all part of the field. But the first thing is to clear the debris, because if you don't clear the debris, you're so bunked up internally, you can't get clarity as to directionality, callings, and gifts. So that's the piece. And when people go off and do callings, positive thinking, Course of Miracles, whatever stuff, the problem with all of it is if they didn't do the debris clearing, it's just going to pull them right back into their stuff again. They're going to have an idea of something, and then they're going to wonder, why can't I manifest? Why can't I sketch? Why can't I write? I know what I want to do. Why can't? And it's because they have to work the psycho-emotional material first, right?
Absolutely. I agree. I totally agree with you. Thanks, Denise, for that. When I was going through this grief process, I was laid out flat. I mean, I just could not function at all. And I do my own business. I'm an entrepreneur, and I was saying to myself, I said, Ayanna, you can either push through this and nothing's going to manifest, or deal with it, clear it, so that you can move forward and create what you want to create. And I did very, very intense clearings from, felt like lifetimes within this lifetime, not just the recent grief, but grief upon grief upon grief. And when those levels of grief, when those levels of shame and those levels of stuff, which many of us have, most of us have, when they started clearing, all of a sudden I'm like, holy Toledo, there's some joy. Oh my gosh, there's some creativity. Oh my goodness, it doesn't take that long to manifest or do a project any longer. It's right. As though all that energy that was stuck down there, got released, and then I was able to do more. So I highly encourage all of us who are listening now and in the future to clear it. Yes, be spiritual, but also let's clear the stuff that is keeping us from our greatest expression here on earth on all levels, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the financial, the relationship. Just clear it. Let's get it. Let's deal with it. And I believe that's what you did, Jeff. I don't know your whole history, but I'm looking forward to reading more about your bio. I'm the type of person who likes to get to know a person and what made them become what they are. And, it sounds like you've done this. You've done it. You've done a lot of it.
There's always more to do, but I spent a lot of years in talk therapy, and that was perfectly appropriate and safe and helpful. And then I moved into a body-centered psych model. I worked with Alexander Lowen, the founder of bioenergetics. I did holotropic breath work with Stan Groff. I did profound physical release practices. And those release, I could have spent 20 years in talk therapy and never gotten to what I got to.
Exactly.
holotropics and bioenergetics release sessions. And I said to Alexander Lowen, who was the most brilliant dude I ever knew really in this field, and said, what is spirituality? He said, spirituality is being spirited. He said, you clear your emotional debris in your body, and then you become naturally spirited, and that's spirituality. And that was the answer I ever got. And all of the bypassy versions of spirit. I went to this Insight and Opening holotropic breathwork. It was half Stan Groff doing holotropic breathwork release work, and half Jack Kornfield doing Vipassana meditation. So you have hundreds of Western people coming from New York and Boston, caffeinated in their cars, flying quickly, everything, getting everything organized so they could have 6 days to themselves. You know the way it goes. And we start with Jack, and Jack's up there in that soft Jack voice, talking, telling stories, and we're all these people sitting on the cushion trying to meditate. They're all tense, they're all uptight, they're all like completely agitated, and I'm thinking something's wrong here. And then Groff, who's the true master, says, let's do holotropic. We do holotropic, we clear, rage, scream, kick, throw your mother off your back, whatever you do. Then you don't got to sit on the frickin' cushion anymore, because now you're naturally meditative, because you've cleared all the debris that interfered with your connection to the oneness. So then I go for a walk. I look at the bulrushes. I see all the bulrushes. I'm in a unified experience. I don't need to sit on the frickin' cushion. I moved it out of me and entered the moment itself. And so, or you can do Tolle's trip and sit on the cushion and pretend and have an aha experience, even though you've left your body completely. Well, why don't you go back down into your body, and you'll have one aha experience after another, as you realize that that you can't be in the now if your consciousness is still trapped in the then. It doesn't even make sense. I understand Oprah's, this is her story, but this is not how it really works. If you just move the stuff through the body, you will enter a more present consciousness. And that's why Osho, as crazy as Osho was, he was brilliant, because he had Osho's dynamic meditation is a morning release practice.
Just shake it.
God bless him. And Alexander Lowen, at 90 years old, Al Lowen was tantruming and kicking in his office, 300 kicks and tantrums every morning. And I'd say, why are you doing this? To clear your childhood debris? He said, of course, but I'm clearing the culture. This culture is completely armored. I need to release every single day in order to come back into the moment. And that's it. And to say that's not spiritual is insanity. Spirituality means reality. The most spiritual person is the one who's in the most inclusive reality-based consciousness, not these other people who are teaching a limited meditation model or a Course of Miracles. They have maybe perfected a singular thread in a wholly expanded weave. They are not masters of spirituality because they are only living in linear frameworks. The true spiritualist is the one who's living in all of it. And that's the direction we need to go now. Because the damage happens when we elevate the singular threaded, perfected individual who's the master meditator, but is a complete mess in their personal life. That's not an enlightened consciousness, right? We got to hold it all together. We got to hold it all together, and we got to hold the masculine and the feminine in our consciousness together. If I'm too much dude, then I'm like a bird with one wing. And if I'm too much in my receptivity, I'm also like a bird with one wing. So this is the work, is to try to get out of these polarized states of consciousness and begin to create a holy weave of wholeness. I mean, that's it, right?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, we're coming down to our last few minutes. And Neil Gar, if you can try to come back in. Hopefully your mic is going to be clear. If it's not, let me know. And I want to, we can take one more question. And Jeff, I'd like you to share about perhaps, I mean, I know we heard about your book, your new book. How do we find out more about you? What are your last words? Do you want to share about Carmageddon? What are your last words? And is there a final question? Because we're going to be wrapping this up.
Carmageddon is much too complicated to, yeah. But it's
okay. So we can watch the documentary.
yeah. There's a trailer and soulshaping.com. It connects inward, and you can have a taste of the madness. Ram Dass is in it. I dialogue. I try to figure out this dude and what my piece in it is, and ultimately I stop blaming his madness, and I have to ask the question we all have to ask, which is, why am I in this dynamic?
Yeah, why are we in that? What about the viral blog, the apologies to the divine feminine from a warrior in transition? Do you have any final words that you like to share about that? Last on Thursday, during our talk, we had one of the sisters, her name was Celeste Morgan. Her only request on that call was she wanted one of the men to read the last paragraph of your, that amazing piece, so that she could hear it from a man's voice. And
why don't you tell Celeste to email me on my website, and I'll send her a link to an audio reading of the apologies to the divine.
Oh, beautiful! I'll say, and I'm going to get one too. Yeah, I'll let her know. And so, anything you want to say about that? And I know you also had another response. You had a response from the masculine. What the masculine like?
There was an apologies to the sacred masculine, which was much harder to write for me than to write the apologies. I mean, I think what I was trying to do, not so consciously but organically in that writing, was to not just to apologize for the behavior of the malevolent masculine, but to contextualize it so that, I think so often women just want to understand where the masculine's moving from, the silent masculine, the running away masculine, and they're left, not understanding why. And often what they don't realize, because of the elevation of men in the culture and patriarchy, that the assumption that the man knew what he was doing but isn't telling you is the mistake. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not familiar with the emotional terrain. He's tempted by it and then often retreats from it. But it was to contextualize it so that we would not just walk away saying, okay, I'm sorry, and disconnect, but to begin to understand sociologically how this happened, how this is happening, why we move from this place, how we've all suffered in it. Not all men have benefited from patriarchy. Most men have not benefited from dominant patriarchy, and most of us live fragmented, polarized lives as a result of the gender bifurcation. So the piece is really, hopefully, and I think the reason it went so wild was because it was more than an apology. It was also a contextualization of where we were moving from, so that women would interpret their experience not as often they feel as though they've been rejected. And if you really read that piece and understand where men were moving from, you can't really feel so rejected. You begin to understand you're dealing with a demented group of people who don't know what they're doing. And that's often the truth. Every
once in a while I'll say, he is really messed up. No.
That's it.
I'm like, have compassion. He's really messed up. He's not in his real true self, and God bless him. I love him anyway. Yeah. And what about the other piece, the one that was harder for you to write?
I had a harder time writing the apology to the masculine, and I'm accused often of having a bias towards the feminine, and I don't know if that's true. I didn't see that much. I other than a difficult mother, I've had nothing but mostly good experiences with the feminine. I've known such wonderful heart-centered women that I really didn't have that many things to apologize for as the feminine. My next piece, which was the What is the Awakening Man piece, I think was the piece where I really tried to grapple with the question of where are we going. So it was like the apologies were about where we had been, and the next question was, so now where are we going? And who do I want to become, and who do I want my brothers to become? And what's interesting, if you look at that piece, it's on my site and on Elephant Journal, you can ask the question how, and this to me is a real interesting question, how is the awakening masculine any different from the awakening feminine? I mean, at the end of the day, what's left of the polarities, and really are there any of these polarities?
That's right. That's right. You're absolutely right about that. I agree with you on that. And I wasn't aware that you had the awakening. You know, what is the awakening man? So I'll look at that. This conversation is to be continued, and really love what you're writing and the voice that you're expressing, not only for the feminine and the masculine, but the inner child. I love, you know, the love it forward and ascending with both feet in the ground. It's all, yeah, your voice is really touching a lot of hearts. And I want to know, is there anyone else who has a final question for Jeff Brown? Any questions? And Neil Gar, thank you. Any questions? Neil, are you coming back on? Jeff, do you have any last words you'd like to share, or anything about what's coming up that you would like us to tap into, or any of your products? Oh, here's a question. Jeff, can you further address the earlier question about working with kids and teens? Oh, I see that.
You know, one of the reasons Stephen asked that, and somebody else, Denise, asked that, is one of the reasons I moved that course to 2016 is so I could more properly address that question, that how this Sacred Purpose course was going to be structured in a different way for younger people. So the course description is different, somewhat different, but I don't have a good answer to that question right now. Encouragement. Just keep opening that heart. I'm convinced that really is the directionality. We have to wake down this head-tripping and armored male consciousness, and we have to be brave about it. But at the same time, we have to do it in increments that are integratable and not go so far down that we end up fragmenting and resisting and pulling back to our habitual way of being. I mean, that's one of the problems I had. I was pushing hard to open, to transform my consciousness, and sometimes I couldn't integrate it. I had to have, we're trying to do the work that hundreds of generations before haven't done. So let's be easy on ourselves, not be so hard on ourselves when we can't quite get where we think we're supposed to go, and really know that even the slightest little opening and integration of that as a way of being is a huge step forward for humankind, for mankind, given that our brothers have been so completely trapped in adaptation and disguise for centuries, really. Every little opening is huge and generationally brings forward the karmic, the ancestry, all of it moves forward and moves along. And so I'd rather do a little bit of movement that's sustainable and integratable than do a lot of movement that swings me back to my old ways of being.
Wow. Wow. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And
it's got to be real, and real means sustainable and integratable. Otherwise you're having a glimpse of something as an adventurer, but you're going back to what you know best. So better we just go a little, but take it deep and true and hold it, and that's huge. And even if we're getting reflection back from people around us that are women are saying, not good enough, I need more connectiveness, I need more. I'm sorry, they have to also understand the sociological landscape that men are moving from and have realistic expectations of that.
Very powerful. Thank you. Thank you for that. Do you have any last words you want to share about your products or services before we conclude?
Most of the stuff is on soulshaping.com, and I have a publishing house in realment.com. And soulshapinginstitute.com, my school just opened, so they can check. Most of it comes in through the fan page on Facebook. I do a lot there. And Uncommon Bond just went up for pre-order. It's on Enrealment, but just went up on Amazon, and it's moving quickly. I think this book is going to move crazy, and I never expect sales. I don't think about that, but I'm nervous with this book, so I think we covered a lot of ground, and we made up some fun language. And I mean, where can you get a definition of cuddlingus? I mean, nowhere. I mean, this is, here. I'll see if I can just share.
Oh yeah, you're supposed to send me the vocabulary. Cuddlingus.
Only one essay. It's goofy. I needed something.
I love it though. And the
Yeah,
heart articulation, the love
that's in there.
elders.
Love Elders is in there. Hourgasm is in there.
Orgasm. Woohoo! Love it.
So lots of stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
it's fun. It's fun and it's
Uh-huh.
incredibly intensely serious at the same time.